Hi all, that's 6 o'clock, so we will make a start. If everyone's comfortably in their positions. Good. I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Council in the new Council Chamber. There is an option to join the meeting via Microsoft Teams for those members and officers who are unable to attend in person. They will be able to partake in the debate remotely, but will not be in attendance formally, and members joining remotely will not be able to vote nor count towards the quorum of the meeting. We are streaming today's meeting live on the internet, and a recorded version will be available to view within 24 hours on the North Somerset Council website. It is my sad duty to speak on the loss to this council of our colleague, Councillor Terry Porter. I won't speak for long, as many in this room knew Terry far better than I, but I will say Terry was a dedicated councillor for Hutting and Locking, a kind man who was easy to work with and impossible to dislike. I always found him a calm, thoughtful and down-to-earth gentleman. My thoughts are with Terry's wife Jan, his wider family and his friends, many of which will be in this chamber tonight. And on that note, I'd like to propose a minute silence for Terry. Thank you all. Moving on to the main agenda, we have apologies for absence, which Nick will present.
Chairperson, I've had advance apologies from Councillors Ashton, Charles, Ellis, Bridger, Parker, Hunt, Thornton, Tucker, Nicholson, Pepperell and Blades.
Thank you, Nick. Any more in the room? No? Thank you. Moving on to public participation. Our first member of the public is Richard Sibley, who I know is with us because I've spoken to him earlier today. Richard, if you'd like to find a position on the top.
Good evening, councillors.
Richard, just
hear me?
Sorry, Richard. Just before you begin, you have 5 minutes, and I'll start as soon as you start speaking.
Thank you. I would like to join Councillor Thomas's comments about Terry. Sad loss. He put a lot of work in, and I'm sure we look forward to a good replacement for his ward. I'm here tonight. I live in Clavering, by the way. My name is Richard Sibley, if you didn't know. Spoken here a couple of times. My concerns tonight are to reflect on next year's May council elections. I believe the whole district would be looking to each of you to help to try and continue the good work you do by looking hard and cold at the state of the country and the council's finances. I don't for a minute put the blame on the council. You've all worked damn hard to try and bring in budgets that would suit and please the taxpayer. But we all have to recognise there's not a bottomless pit in people's pockets. So during the run-up, I would hope by the end of this year, we start all of us to collectively reflect on our current positions politically. What I'm saying is, and I think the council taxpayers would welcome this, public debate, open debate about how this council this district can communicate and align with the potential government that I see having to come, not just because we choose it, but the MFI or the premium on the gilts yield will force change. I don't think we all look forward to change. Change is abnormal to most people. And I'm sure as councillors, you had long held, I would say, dedicated beliefs in your own standing, your own voters' election requirements. And I'd like to touch on the real nub of it. I'm sure each of you have promised your council, your electorate, to serve them, not just to serve the ones that supported your own particular party vote, but all the ones that didn't vote for you. Take on board that we have to cut costs. We have to address the deficits at national level, and we cannot go on asking for a 9.89%, I think that's the right figure, increase in council tax, even if the national government brings in permission for you to exceed it. So, going back to my main point, and let me be honest, I'm saying you've all done a great job. You're all standing up. You're all out there doing what you need to do. But we need to reflect. And I'd like to encourage you. I'd like to contact each of you and talk this through. How can you hold to as many of your beliefs as possible whilst trying to align with what will have to be the changes that are coming? That was the first subject. I won't keep you too long. At the moment, the council tax debt is going to add to the payments of taxpayers for as long as we've got that capital debt. And I'd like to know from each of you your recommendations for whatever it takes to cut that capital debt as quickly as possible. We can all wish that we can keep borrowing. We can all wish that the taxpayers will keep divvying up. But the whatnot's going to hit the fan next council election if you don't come up with a plan that honourably recognises your current position, but also recognises the changes that are coming. I'd like to thank Councillor Thomas for chairing the meeting today. I'd like to thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sibley. Our next speaker is Debbie Johnson. Debbie, you also have 5 minutes, starting from when you start speaking.
Okay, sorry. You will have to probably stop me because it would be difficult for me to stop. So, Save Felton Common. I've come this evening to talk to you about the campaign that we started when we heard that Macquarie were planning to take over some of Felton Common for their airport expansion plans. And several of us have come to speak today because this is the first council meeting that you've had since the end of the consultation period. I have had the pleasure of speaking before at the beginning of this period, and as I said previously, the common land is unique and in North Somerset, and it's rare in the country generally. So as that such, it's a diminishing resource that needs our protection. The threat to it by a huge organisation like Macquarie is astonishingly threatening to us as local people. They have the facility to spend vast amounts of money on their proposal, which is enormous and takes up several huge documents, and needs a truck to transport it. And we are volunteers with very little money to expend on opposing this proposal. But we've done the best we can, and I just wanted to give you a potted example of the things that we've done. We've had a band of really tight-knit people who have been working really hard on this throughout the previous months. We've trawled through the documents. Several members of our group have looked in detail at various different ones and have come up with various things that they think need to be looked at further. And we've put in a detailed objection and submitted it, which I urge you all to read. We also hope that that will complement some of the other things that you will have to read on the proposal itself at some point. But one of the biggest things I wanted to mention today is the fact that we've actually done 4 enormous mock-ups of this lighting proposal on the Common itself. And I know that several of you have been to the Common at our invitation and seen the mock-ups, which has been really lovely, and thank you to those of you who have come. We've also had several of the councillors from Baines who have also come to see the mock-ups. And what I would say is that we've given some pictures of the mock-ups. You've all been sent emails which contain them. And I've given some leaflets which can be distributed after the meeting today. But what I would say is it's very, very difficult to show the reality in a photograph. Being there to experience it is a real eye-opener. And the people who have been, not only members of the councils, but members of the public, obviously. We've had over 300, nearly 400 people viewing these mock-ups, have all been astonished at the impact they are going to make on the Common. Not just the 1% of land that the CEO of Macquarie is trying to say to you. It will actually have an enormous impact. Goes well over halfway across a very open space of wild country land, and the 10-foot high fencing that goes around each lighting block will just add to the eyesore that these lights will bring. So just on the look of them alone, it's going to be pretty hideous. But before I get cut off, I want to give you a little anecdote. So the last mock-up we did was the 4th of July. Now, the lighting goes up in height from the boundary of the airport all the way to the final light, which is 8.5 metres high in the middle of the Common. We've had a local person who's lent us a telehandler so that we can hold a telegraph pole, which is 8.5 metres high, in place to show people what effect that would have. Bearing in mind we can't put the lights on the top, so we haven't done that bit. After we walked away with the last group of councillors, and obviously the aeroplanes are giving us a good show during their incoming across the path of the lights onto the airport runway, whilst we're walking along them with the councillors. We turned around to go back, and apparently people have talked about the vortices which follow the planes and the damage that those vortices can do to local properties.
Debbie, excuse me, Debbie, that's been 5 minutes. If you'd just sum up. If you could.
Picked up the pole, this 8.5 metre telegraph pole, and threw it down on the ground. Luckily, there's nobody there that could, but I just wanted to say the planes are going to be coming in 12.5 metres lower than the existing ones that just did that the other day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Jackie Norden. Welcome, Jackie. You know the score by now. It's 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair, councillors, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Jackie, and I am a local resident concerned about the cumulative impacts of Bristol Airport's proposed expansion on our communities, environment and legal obligations. First, Bristol Airport is now 100% foreign owned by investment funds in Australia and the United States. The profits leave the UK, and while local people bear the costs through increased noise, pollution, traffic, and the pressure on public services. And when we talk about economic benefits, we need to ask who really benefits, and it's not the communities living under the flight path. The proposal to increase capacity to 15 million passengers per year and beyond means more flights, more nighttime disturbance, more traffic, more emissions, and greater pressure on already stressed communities and ecosystems. Every other impact flows from that increase. A particular significant change is the introduction of long-haul aircraft. These flights generate far higher emissions than short-haul services and would bring a significant increase in air pollution, noise, and climate impacts. This is not a marginal change. It fundamentally alters the airport's environmental footprint. Long-haul operations also introduce a risk that does not currently exist. Long-haul aircraft are equipped with fuel dump systems and may need to jettison fuel in emergencies before landing. Short-haul aircraft do not have this requirement. This potential risk to the local environment has not been given sufficient attention. I would also like to speak briefly from personal experience. I am living with a brain tumour. This has made me acutely aware of how noise, vibration, light intrusion, and pollution affect people with neurological and sensory conditions. For people with epilepsy, autism, brain injuries, migraines, PTSD, and other conditions, these impacts can worsen symptoms and significantly reduce quality of life. The Equality Act 2010 requires public bodies to consider the impact of decisions on vulnerable groups, yet that consideration is not clearly visible in the airport's documentation. We must also consider the ecological damage. The airport sits within a landscape used by protected bat species, skylarks, and other wildlife that depend on dark, quiet habitats. Increased flights, lighting, noise, and pollution will further fragment those habitats and intensify pressures on an ecosystem that is already under strain. This runs counter to the aims of the Environment Act 2021, which requires us all to halt nature's decline, not accelerate it. The proposal also sits uneasily against the UK's wider legal commitments. The Climate Change Act 2008 sets legally binding carbon budgets and a net zero target for 2050, yet aviation remains one of the fastest growing sources of emissions. Questions also remain about whether the full climate, environmental and cumulative impacts have been adequately assessed and whether the public has been able to engage meaningfully with such a complex process. This is not just a planning issue, it is a public health issue, a climate issue, an ecological issue, and a community issue. We are being asked to accept higher emissions, greater noise, more pollution, ecological damage, and the introduction of long-haul aircraft, while much of the financial benefit is exported overseas. That's not a balanced or responsible model for development. So finally, before approving final expansion, I ask you to consider what is really at stake. Our green spaces, clean air, dark skies, wildlife, and the health of our communities. We are at risk of trading something precious and irreplaceable for more tarmac and more traffic. As Joni Mitchell once sang, "Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. This is the moment to protect what remains before the damage becomes permanent." Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jackie. Next we have Tim Meehan. Sorry, Tim, if you I don't think your speaker's on. If you pop.
Hello? Any Bowie fans in the room? Oh, good. Okay, well, you get 10 seconds of this very quickly. Then you can start your 5 minutes. Oh, God, no, I can't do it. Oh, that will teach me. Hold on. Right, that'll be enough. Sound and vision. I'm talking about sound and vision. I'm talking about Felton Common and what needs to be considered. I've dug deep, or deepish, although I'll come back and dig deeper. My name's Tim Meehan. I'm here to talk about the light and sound created by the changes to the airport. I've lived in Churchill for the last 12 years. We moved from central Bristol, where I'd lived for 30 years previously. I'm a big fan. I was a big fan of the airport. I'm no longer a big fan of the airport or flying. Every night I see the aircraft lights going to and fro across the Severn. It's lovely, really, little lights flashing across. And in the morning, I'm gently woken up at 6 o'clock when the first plane takes off. I live 4 miles away. The M5 is about 4 miles away from me as well. I don't hear anything. I can't even see it, but I can certainly hear the airport. The A38 is 200 metres away from me. I can't hear it, I can't see it, there's no light that appears, no light pollution from it particularly, but the airport very definitely is. I'm going to talk about lighting, I'm going to talk about vision first. The runway lighting, the landing lights if you like, we know why it's there, you've got to land your plane, but it doesn't need to be Felton Common, and it could be elsewhere. The runway lights these days, a few things about modern runway lights, and we don't know what we're getting at Felton Common. Modern runway lights produce a narrow beam just aimed at the pilot, literally aimed at the eyes of the pilot from the ground, or from halfway up a pole. They're focused. They can see them clearly. They are also soft white light. They don't affect the bat's radar. That's helpful as well. They should be that. They don't have to be. They can be turned off and on automatically as each of the planes land or take off. You don't need to have them on all of the time. You can reduce them down from full beam to 10% if you want. They don't need to be there blazing away. Unfortunately, whatever you do, you're still going to upset what's in Felton Common. And you're going to turn Felton Common from being a nature reserve into a nature desert. I'm saying you because it's your decision. The bats may still be able to use their radar, but the rest of the insects won't be wanting to fly around in what's going to be daylight for them, quite possibly. And they're going to either leave or they'll be very quickly eaten by the bats, and then the bats will run out of food and they'll starve. Any other wildlife hanging around in Felton Common will probably move on very quickly. They won't be wanting to be out hunting or looking for their own food, whatever, when there's so much light around. They won't be getting much food. So the diversity of the plants and animals will disappear very quickly from Felton Common. Okay, so that's a bit upsetting, all that light. Moving on to sound. Sound is a killer. Sound from aircraft is a killer. Exposure to aircraft noise increases cardiovascular disease. Now, I know this from personal experience. My cardiovascular disease isn't too hot. But whilst some modern planes may be quieter nowadays than the ones they're currently using, most of them, now they're going to use long-haul planes, are going to be even louder and noisier and create more energy waves as they move through the air. That's going to be a problem for us. It's going to harden, it literally hardens our arteries, having to listen to aircraft noise. It can cause changes in the heart structure and your heart muscle. It leads to strokes, it leads to heart attack. This is due as the aircraft leave and arrive, the noise goes on and off, and it upsets your rhythm. It upsets how your
Tim,
body works.
could I ask you to wind up now? That's been 5
I'm
minutes.
going to be quick. Sound also makes your children less clever. It causes hyperactivity in children, and it causes reading comprehension impairment from aircraft noise. Sound and noise, it ruins your mental health. Going on and off, it will cause continuous stress response, releasing stress hormones that raise blood pressure. It's well documented. I will happily pass on the documentation. I'm going to stop there. Bigger planes, bigger noises, bigger lights, bigger local problems for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. To continue the musical theme, we have Oz Osborne joining us as well. Mr. Osborne.
Enough laughing at my name. I was born in London and raised in North Somerset, and I love this county. I put down roots here, planted tens of thousands of trees, chaired the UK's first green initiatives group, that's Go Zero, and won the 1994 European Environment Award for Zero Carbon Transport Fuels through my work as a Director for Biopower UK. As the son of an eminent civil engineer, for 40 years I've fought the folly of a regional airport on the vast 1,000-acre Carboniferous limestone water collection upland of Lulsgate Down. After my father performed a survey on the sinkholes appearing on the runway, he was commissioned to do this by the then Managing Director of Bristol Airport. The ancient and fragile aquifers beneath the runway that form the headwaters of both the Ken and the Chew River systems, several times these have given way and caved in under the weight of countless 100-ton aircraft landings. My father, to get his money for doing this survey, had to sign a non-disclosure agreement with the airport, something I'm not bound by. So I think you should know about this. So never mind the spectre of fuel spillages and PFA chemicals used in fire suppressant foam. And of course, that would leach down through the limestone into the aquifers, feeding to the Chew River system, which runs for hundreds of miles. This would wipe out aquatic life forever and preclude abstraction of that water permanently. Amongst the many compelling expert witnesses' reports, you will read objections from the airport expanding. You will also find in the objecting claims made by Save Felton Common on the very new research into UFPs, ultrafine particles, emitted by jet aircraft. It is written by a very eminent lecturer at UWE, Dr. David Dickerson. In his career, he has trained many environmental health officers and is a man that you, North Somerset, asked to speak for you, for the county that is, against BA's 2018 expansion, the last time they tried to expand. Despite the 85% of North Somerset residents who petitioned against this. In this, Dr. Dickerson draws attention to how the human and animal lung tissue has little defence against ultrafine particles entering the bloodstream and organs of the body with fatal or serious health impacts. This is backed by a recent Department of Transport Heathrow third runway review into UFPs and the effects of human health. Exposure to constant very loud noise emissions, covered by the last speaker. The conclusions of which recommend the cessation of all UK airport expansion as a precaution before medical legal claims for the harm done to people living near airports are made. As a council teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, we can surely not afford to get sued for our part in letting this go ahead. Leaving aside the liability, we need to see through the fog of untruths and realise that the 1,000 or so low-paid jobs that BA incalculable losses faced by the people of North Somerset in premature deaths, adult care, NHS care, and from noise and air pollution. There are no safe limits for human exposure to these emissions. Taking all this new and old information into account, it's time for North Somerset to stem the hemorrhaging local economic and health losses and to revoke BA's licence to operate. If central government preclude that measure, then permission for no more than 1 million passengers per year and 0 night flights should be implemented for the above reasons. In closing, I must add that I have written to King Charles on the subject of losing our 100-acre common and surrounding farmland and wild places to an expanded airport. I have this letter with me, and he is in support of our efforts and to stand up for loss of nature and for a sustainable world. Be brave, council members. Become the first UK council to say no. At this town hall today, more so than any other time in our history, we find ourselves on the brink of man-made disaster, and we are charged with the responsibility to literally choose our county's fate. To corporate giants and to a healthy population and a place that people want to come and holiday rather than transit through. Thank you.
Thank you, Oz. That's all our speakers for this evening. Thank you for the speakers. Thank you, members of the public, for joining us as well. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you would like to leave, please do so in an orderly manner. I believe there's a football match kicking off in about an hour and a half that some of you might want to see, but you're obviously very welcome to join us for the rest of the meeting. Moving on, members, agenda item 3, which is the Declaration of Disposable Pecuniary Interests. We've received none, but if there's any in the room, please make us aware. None? Thank you very much. Agenda item 4 is the minutes. Before I move them for approval, Nick's just going to bring something to your...
So members, one of your eagle-eyed colleagues has spotted that in the adjourned meeting, the second part of the Tropicana meeting, if you like, I think what has happened is the people who had given a notice of apologies have been drawn through into the second meeting from the April meeting. So they're showing as apologising for the May part of the meeting as well. I will correct that. I know they were there because they were there for the named vote. So we will correct that. But with that change, I put the minutes to you.
Thank you, Nick. With that amendment, I will propose the minutes. Can I seek a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mason. All in favour? Thank you, members. Agenda item 5 is the motions by members. Again, we received none, but so we move on to agenda item 6, which is the Castlewood dispersal, and the leader to present.
Thank you, Chair. I thought you were inviting motions from the floor then for a minute, because I was going to say, don't give people that opportunity on a hot evening. We'll be here all night. Thank you very much. So this item is obviously in relation to the proposed disposal of the Castlewood office building in Clevedon. So as colleagues will know, Castlewood has served North Somerset Council as an office space for 16 years. The building was purchased by the then administration back in 2010. I just can't resist just pointing out that I opposed the purchase at that time. When our partnership administration came into office, we agreed to exit Castlewood and progress an alternative residential-led development scheme. The logic for that was very straightforward. Good councils don't hold on to buildings simply because they always have. And our responsibility is to make sure that public assets continue to deliver public value. So the council took the decision to exit from Castlewood, and since then we have done exactly what members asked for, which was to explore residential redevelopment, undertake technical work, test the market and develop proposals. And that's what's been progressing over the last few years. But of course, this year things have changed and a significantly better opportunity has emerged through the offer from the police, which is set out in the papers. The proposal before us secures a £7.5 million capital receipt, so that's around 2.5 times higher than the estimated land value through residential redevelopment. It avoids years of planning and development risk. It keeps the building in productive use. It supports the creation of up to 550 skilled jobs in Clevedon and provides confidence and an economic boost for the future of the town. It also avoids further development costs falling on local taxpayers. Some members, of course, will rightly ask about the housing allocation, both through the local plan and our ambitions for affordable housing. Housing remains one of this administration's highest priorities. However, we can balance that against the fact that our affordable housing delivery is currently exceeding target across North Somerset, and this proposal does deliver wider economic benefits whilst preserving the option to return to residential development should the purchase not proceed. This is not about selling an asset for the sake of it. It is about choosing the option that provides the greatest overall public value, both for Clevedon and for North Somerset Council's taxpayers. It's important to note that the offer from the police is subject to business case approval, but if that concludes successfully, then the sale would progress at pace as set out in the papers. So I'm happy to move the recommendations and ask for support. Thank you.
Does that have a seconder, members? Councillor Kenneford. Would you like to speak now as well, Mark? Or? Okay. Debate, members. Any questions? Councillor Tristram.
Thank you. As Mike has mentioned, we're not going to be spending, we're going to be, part of the saving here is that we're going to not be spending money on the planning for the housing that we had already started. But it does also mean that North Somerset isn't going to have some of the types of housing that we had wanted to do and we would want to do in the north of the district. Can we be reassured that some of the money we are going to be saving will be put aside for mitigating the lack of our influence on housing in that area?
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations for stepping in on the first full council that you've presided over. I would say that I welcome the move, as I was always keen to protect some business use and as many of the local services on the Castlewood site as possible moving forward. So I do see this as a public benefit to retain a strategic employer. My main concern or item to flag would be the new owner would be, or likely be, a riparian owner, and the Environment Agency has been very keen to not maintain the land yet. So how, through the disposal and to an extent planning, can we, North Somerset, encourage responsible blue asset management?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Gibbons, I have you next.
Thank you. I'll endeavour not to repeat points that others have made, but you know, I do recognise that we've all understandably had to ask ourselves a lot of questions around the housing issue and what we've lost there, and whether housing should take priority over retaining employment land, and the question of selling an asset for 12.6 million, which was purchased for 12.6 million, 7.5 million. However, I think it's important to remember that the council, as we've heard, has benefited for 16 years of operational use of Castlewood and has repaid much of the borrowing. And now there's only 4.6, I think, million of the debt remaining. So this isn't simply about comparing purchase and sale prices. It's about the value of the building that has already been delivered and making the right decision for its future. It's not just about balancing the books, and this proposal for me brings around 550 skilled jobs to Clevedon, keeping an office base there that will strengthen the local economy. It retains that employment site, and it gives a new lease of life to this building through investment to make sure it's more sustainable and energy efficient, reducing carbon emissions through reuse rather than development. So I think from a governance and a financial perspective, it's the lowest risk and highest value option for us. It provides financial certainty, and we heard from a public speaker how we should all be mindful of how we are going to make sure that this council has financial stability. So it does offer something of that. It supports Clevedon's economy and creates skilled local employment. However, I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that this was a site identified for around 120 new homes. And if we proceed with the sale, I would like to see the council actively exploring how we can replace those homes elsewhere in the Clevedon area. We know there's a need for high quality, affordable, or even social homes, and that hasn't gone away. And we should be ambitious in identifying alternative opportunities so that Clevedon can continue to play its part in meeting our housing needs, as well as retaining a very valuable employment and office space. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Brake, have you next?
Thank you, Chair. I can't resist by pointing out to Mike that I was 10 years old when this asset was bought. I find myself in support of this, but I'm a bit just concerned about the cart before the horse on this. As my understanding is that we can agree this tonight, but then the PCC in their meeting in September could go with an alternative site. And just wanting to just quickly understand the back process of if the PCC goes in another direction, how quickly will we be bringing reports back on what we would like to then do with that site. I would welcome, I think, again, a conversation around housing in the Clevedon area. Obviously, the great difficulty that we face in Clevedon is that on one side we have the sea, on two sides we have a river, on the other side we have a motorway. And so I think within the local plan, I'm sure we'll have discussions about that. But as you know, it is quite difficult for us to build that needed housing in Clevedon.
Thank you, Councillor Brake. Councillor Harriott, to have you next.
Thank you, Chair. This is my first speech to this council since I got elected in February. So I just wanted to start by acknowledging the person who got me here, which is my father, Paul Harriott. Paul was a Labour councillor in Kent. He represented the largest council estate in Kent that was built post-war to house the servicemen and women in the Kent area. He believed passionately that everyone deserves a decent home, a place where family can put down roots, where rent is affordable, and where people have the security knowing that they can build a future. He understood that a decent home is not a luxury, it's the foundations of a strong society. Children do better at school when they have a stable home. Parents are able to work when they aren't worried about moving. Good housing improves health, reduces pressure on public services, strengthens communities, and gives people a chance to build better lives. That's why investing in affordable homes isn't a housing policy. It's an investment in the future of our communities. These are the values I grew up. I heard them around the dinner table. I saw them in the work my dad did. And it's the reason I'm here today. So it probably won't surprise anyone that the first contribution I've made to this council is around housing. Today we're asked to sell Castlewood site rather than develop it for housing. The Clevedon Housing Needs Survey, which the Clevedon Community Land Trust did, identified a need for 250 additional homes in Clevedon. Alliance Homes is already delivering 50 homes in the Mill Cross development, and the Clevedon Community Land Trust have ambitious plans to deliver more than 100 affordable homes. Castlewood has the potential to provide the remaining homes. If we choose to sell Castlewood, without making it sure it develops our homes, our community needs, we'll be turning our backs on families who simply want what most of us take for granted: a safe, secure and affordable place to call home. We have an opportunity tonight to leave a lasting legacy by creating homes that will serve our community for generations. I believe we should seize this opportunity, not sell it. For that reason, I'll be voting against the policy, the proposal to sell Castlewood, and I urge colleagues to support developing the site for much-needed housing instead. However, I do recognise that if this council does proceed with the sale, I ask for one commitment. The Clevedon Community Land Trust needs the financial support to complete the surveys and technical work to bring its plans forward. I urge the council to begin genuine dialogue with the trust and use a small proportion of the sale proceeds to help unlock their ambitions. By doing so, we can still ensure that the decision contributes to more than 100 homes for the people of Clevedon. Whatever decision we make tonight, we should make it with the next generation in mind, because homes we build today are the communities we create for tomorrow.
Thank you, Councillor. Your maiden speech was certainly worth the wait. I'm certain we hear plenty more. Councillor Caniford.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points I wanted to pick up on the whole thing, being one of those councillors who opposed this purchase in the first place, which I think is important, but it has done a good job and it has had an effect in Clevedon and Clevedon's economic position. It's important to understand that the economic benefit to Clevedon will be greater with the changes. There is little doubt about that. What is being proposed is an office of some quality, and what is being proposed is work of the highest quality by people who are going to definitely benefit the community there. Let's understand that housing at this stage wasn't even at a planning stage, it was still at a development stage. And we've all made assumptions of how much we were going to get, but we don't know that yet. And I think it is fair, and I'm sure Councillor Waite will support this, that there is a surplus in the local plan just for this purpose, for different reasons that come up. As a council, and all of us as councillors, have a real need to be able to respond to changes in what is going on around us, and I think this is one of those situations. And I'm comfortable to pin my name on a legacy of good quality jobs, reusing property properly for the benefit of the services that are required, and that is law and order, and we know we need that, and also to keep a really good place going in Clevedon rather than just shutting it down.
Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Chairman. I very much support what Mark has said. I fully support this, but I won't say too much because I'm on the finance panel of the Police and Crime Commission.
Thank you, Councillor Crew. Sorry, one more question. Councillor Dorr.
Thanks. I've been looking at this, and I just think that there's a few things with the headlines being somewhat over the place, with the fact that it says 7.5 million in capital receipt, but then we've still got 3.6 million to pay off. So there's that, but there's also, from my understanding of this, is going to be the Police and Crime Commissioner's new office. So it's 500 jobs that the police are paying for. That I'm looking for nods as to people. This Police and Crime Commissioner office, isn't it? Right. Okay, I've just read what I was reading online. Okay, that's right. All right, I'll just get to the main question, which is that if the police turn around and pull out, at what stage? It says on here the one-off costs associated with decommissioning of the 444,000. At what stage does that money start to be spent? Is that after they've said yes, or is that from this moment of this decision now? If they turn around and say no in their business case, how much money could we have spent on this?
Thank you, Councillor Dorr. Councillor Holland, I have you next.
Yeah, my question is very similar to Councillor Dorr's. It's basically, if this does fall through on the end of September, 30th of September, was it? How much money have we spent on a deal that didn't happen? Are we going to waste any money? Or is it basically cost-free to us?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Waite, have you?
Thank you very much. Councillor Harriott, just wanted to thank you very much for your first ever speech here. It really, I completely understand what you're saying, because I think for me personally and for all of us as a group here, I know that building affordable homes is absolutely crucial. I think there is a dire shortage of homes in the country, but also in North Somerset. So I completely understand the point that you've tried to make. I'd also like to agree with Mark Caniford here, because actually the way the local plan has been designed and it's now been submitted to the inspectorate, there is an excess surplus within the local plan, which means that if this doesn't get used for housing, we do have other options to do that. That may not necessarily be in exactly the same place, obviously, because this building wouldn't be available, but we would certainly be looking at providing those. But actually, as I would also like to point out that there is a serious environmental benefit for not tearing down Castlewood. The embodied carbon in that building, I think if this building could be reused and could be made more energy efficient, then I think there is something to be said for actually leaving the embodied carbon where it is. So I just thought that was also worth making the point, but thank you.
Thank you, Annemieke. Councillor Applin.
Yeah, Mark and Mike might not know the answer to this one, but I was just wondering if the police has signalled that they might close the one in Diamondbatch if they were to buy the Clevedon one, which should obviously worry some of us because the police presence in Weston is pretty low anyway. So if they were to move over 100 officers from Weston to Clevedon, it would take longer response times and things like that.
Thank you. Councillor Clayton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Listening to the debate here, I mean, in relation to affordable housing, is affordable housing affordable? But that is a completely separate debate, so I don't really want to get into that. If we were talking social housing, completely different ballgame altogether. We've got a responsibility as a council to our taxpayers. We have just raised our council tax enormously to pay for a lot of the money that we need to make up. Now, if we were looking at the sale of Castlewood and say, yeah, we'll sell it for £3.5 million less just because it's in our local plan, I think that would be irresponsible of us as a council. So I think there's a lot of good questions here in relation to whether if the deal was to fall through or not, how would we react to it, but that's just part and parcel of any sale of a property. But I'm firmly in support of this, and I would urge the council to get behind it also.
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. Looks like that's all questions from the floor, so I will go back to the leader to sum up.
Thank you very much, and I'll try and canter through the questions. I'll sort of do them in reverse order and might batch some if I remember which one's in right order. So, Councillor Applin, Mark, and actually this links to your question as well, Tom. So this is not an operational policing building. It will not be solely for Avon and Somerset Police. It is as set out in the papers, it is a strategic policing resource for the Southwest and potentially for the whole country. So there is no suggestion that existing operational facilities, including the police headquarters at Portishead or local police operational stations, including Diamondbatch, will be affected in any way. It's different policing functions, and so those won't be impacted. So absolutely can give that assurance, and we've eyeballed the police about this and been clearly reassured about that. How much have we spent, Councillor Holland asked, how much have we spent working up a deal that might not happen? I mean, the answer is virtually nothing. Other than officer time, we haven't done anything yet because there is no deal. Once we get to the point where the police are happy and they're satisfied their business case conditions and they want to proceed with the purchase, that would be the point at which we would then be spending on legal processes and so on. If the deal doesn't happen, then obviously we just fall back to the status quo, which is that we are progressing the residential development scheme with our partners, Aqueous Developments, and we would carry on doing that. Tom, you asked about so just to be crystal clear, it is not an office for the Police and Crime Commissioner. The Avon and Somerset Police are the organisation that is acting on behalf of the police in order to acquire the building, but the operation is not an Avon and Somerset function. It is absolutely not the Police and Crime Commissioner's new office, and indeed Police and Crime Commissioners are being abolished from 2028, so they definitely don't need an office. In terms of decommissioning costs, it's worth remembering that we've already taken the decision to leave and sell or demolish Castlewood, so we've got decommissioning costs whether we like it or not. We are committed to those, but we won't be spending them until we've got a pathway either to development or to the sale to the police. It might be that if we go with the police sale, some of those decommissioning costs come earlier because we want to get out of the building more quickly. But of course, that's counterbalanced by we get the capital receipt earlier as well. So I don't think that is a concern. Councillor Pryke talked about cart before the horse. Well, yes, it is confusing, isn't it, that the process is that we have to agree in principle that we're prepared to sell when the police are not completely committed to purchase. That's just the way it is. They have to go through their chain of command and get Home Office approvals. So we've got a process to go through. What they want to be confident in is that we are willing to sell before they go through that business case process. I am confident that we're going to get the decision correct and that we'll get the decision that we want to dispose to the police. And I think it will be a very positive thing for Clevedon. I should note that you mentioned that you were 10 when Castlewood was foolishly bought by the previous administration. That is, of course, the age of criminal responsibility. So I don't think you can completely wash your hands. And then I think the more substantive point, on the flooding issue, Councillor Smith, Luke, absolutely, really happy to raise that with the police. We would expect any future proposals for that site, whether it's a police operation or a residential development, to properly address the flood risks and responsibilities. They will need to go through some sort of planning process, even if it's very modest changes. So that will be an opportunity for us to cement those issues in due course. And then the wider point about the loss of affordable housing, I think we all agree on the importance of delivering more affordable housing. That's why, as Councillor Waite said, we have got an ambitious local plan that sets out to deliver the government's targets, even though we think they are in some ways unachievable. A higher standard of affordable housing than we've ever had in this council. We have delivered more affordable homes year on year under this administration since 2019 than ever before, and we will continue to do that. I cannot commit because we haven't got the money yet, so I am absolutely not going to commit how we spend the money this evening, but I think we've all heard the conversation about affordable housing, the priority that underpins that, and the importance of Clevedon feeling some benefit from this scheme, and to making sure that we do continue to deliver against our ambitions on affordable housing. And in particular, I think the proposals from Clevedon Community Land Trust, Councillor Harriott, are definitely something that we would want to look at if this deal does go ahead. So I would encourage colleagues to support the recommendations. I do think it's the best value for money for our taxpayers. It's the best deal for the Clevedon community, and it gives us flexibilities to do more to meet our extensive capital challenges, including housing delivery, than we could do if we stuck with our current course.
Thank you, Mike. Well summed up. There was 14 questions in there, so you did well to pair some up. To the vote, members, we have a proposal in front of us. The recommendation is that this council agrees to approve the freehold sale of the entirety of the Castlewood site to the Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon Somerset Police, PO Blocks 27 Valley Road, Portishead. Accept the purchase price of 7.5 million. Note the anticipated sale completion date of 30th December 2026, and note the ongoing work streams required to decommission Castlewood. That's the recommendation in front of us. Members in favour? Any against? And any abstentions?
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, members. That was a very fine debate. Moving on to agenda item 7, which is Burnbeck Pier, acceptance of additional grant funding, and Councillor Caniford will be presenting to this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so you've hopefully read the papers, and I've just lost all mine. First of all, I would like to thank Councillor Bell and officers for making this proposal and working with Dan Aldridge, who carried it through Westminster for us. So I think gratitude has to go for those people who did put a great deal of work in this previously. So we are here tonight. It's one of these strange ones. We're here tonight to all agree, or not, that we want to accept the £19 million being offered to us from the Growth Fund. This money will allow us to do further work on the land side to help us make the project more sustainable. But it will also, it's also been indicated that we would be able to rebuild the North Jetty, which would allow boats to again come back to Burnbeck Pier and again have some benefit economically to the pier and to the headland in the town overall. It's worth remembering this has now brought support from our partners in government of £44 million, which is a considerable amount of money for a project, and clearly by just that token proves that this is a very popular project outside of North Somerset, and it seems to be getting more and more support. To this stage, things are going really well. We don't have any nasty surprises this spring on anyone, and we are to schedule, and we have been pretty lucky with the weather, which is great. So this is really great progress, and I would like to see us support the grant, or support the acceptance of the grant, so we can continue the good work that we've started.
Thank you, Councillor Caniford. We go into the debate. Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I fully support this. The one good thing coming from this is we've had a lot of discussion going on about the jetty, and we said where we were was very difficult to do because of the condition. We know the Balmoral and other potential ones, that is the best place for them to come in, and this gives us the opportunity which will make it even better than we thought we were going for in the first place. Fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Crew. Are you also happy to second the proposal?
Yes.
Thank you. Any more questions, members? Councillor Dorr.
I just said on the financial and financial sustainability and operational managers, operational arrangements. I can't read today. I apologise. It just doesn't really say much on there about taking this money and using it to then have more on the site operational, about whether there's any effect on it becoming harder to find an operator, or the increase in costs of maintaining the further works that we are doing. So I was just wondering if what thought has been put into it, if you expect there to actually be any.
Thank you, Councillor Dorr. Just any more questions before I go back to Mark? Councillor Clayton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it needs to be said, this is 30 plus years that this pier has been left rotting and almost falling in the sea. I'm actually really proud of this administration and this council to actually be the one in 30 plus years to actually revive this old pier and make it a great attraction. And I think, I think we need to really sort of celebrate this, and, for the public to understand that, this is a massive achievement. So, well done to this council and well done to this administration.
Thank you, James. Mark, I'll come back to you.
Thank you. And yes, and Tom, if you go a little bit further down, you'll see that some of those things have been addressed in the risk. So in terms that they are being addressed, they are being discussed, they are being understood. And I think there are a lot more discussions to have to go on regarding the actual work around the island and how we create more of an attraction. I think it's fair to say there'll need to be more money, because the amount this project needs is huge. So I think it's a fair comment in terms of understanding that this isn't completing all the work, there's no doubt, but it is allowing us to do the bits that will generate some income, and it will allow us to create some growth in that location. So I think in those two issues, I think that's the benefit. Yes, there's always going to be risk with a project like this, and we have to understand the longer government takes to give us the money, and that's not this government, but any government, inflation affects building costs, and there's always that risk. But that, again, is being recognised in the risk. So I think those risks have been taken into account, are being covered. Otherwise, Chairman, I would like to just find support from Council to carry on the work we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Caniford. We have a recommendation in front of us is to note the progress of delivery of the Birnbeck Pier project and the process for securing growth mission funding, and to delegate authority to the Section 151 officer in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Sustainable Places, Councillor Caniford, to enter into the relevant grant funding agreements for receipt of the growth mission funding and to increase the gross capital budget in line with the receipt of the grant. So, votes in favour, members? Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you, Nick. Agenda item 8 was the Cabinet Priorities 26-27, and that is the leader once again to present.
Thank you very much. So the Cabinet Priorities paper that is being presented this evening is principally for to invite feedback, essentially, and I'm really happy if people want to feedback now or if they want to go away and think about it and feedback later. But the purpose of this is to set out what the key priorities and objectives for each Cabinet portfolio are over the remainder of this term, because we all know that residents don't judge us by our strategies or more often than not by the debates that we have in this council chamber. They judge us by whether we can get things done, and that means visible delivery in our communities. So the objective of this paper is to build upon the corporate plan to highlight across every cabinet portfolio the work that we're doing to deliver stronger communities, sound finances, better services, and a growing local economy. And the priorities that are outlined in the document, which all of my cabinet colleagues have contributed to, are deliberately intended to be practical. So they're about things like better roads, better support for vulnerable residents, more homes, stronger local businesses, modern digital services, cleaner neighbourhoods, and so on, and all linking back to that same test. Will residents notice the difference? We heard from one of the public speakers earlier about the challenge that people feel that they are paying more and more every year, which of course they are, but they don't necessarily see a difference on the back of that. So that is what this paper is very much about. We all know the challenging financial environment in which we're continuing to experience in local government, and that's why clear priorities are so important, because they will then help us to focus resources where they will have the greatest impact and where our residents will feel the greatest difference. So, as I say, I welcome comments and feedback from members as the Cabinet continues to deliver against these priorities. The intention is that we will bring back a report to every council meeting going forward on progress against these priorities. That will be not necessarily always a report for us to have a big debate and discussion, but at least a written paper that updates everyone on the progress that's been made, and an opportunity for members to challenge and scrutinise that through the normal processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Does Mike have a seconder for this agenda item? Councillor Whitfield, thank you very much. Do you wish to speak to it now? No? Questions, members? Councillor Griggs.
Thank you. I really like the statement, visible delivery and not broad strategy in this document, because I think that is really essential for our residents in our community, to see something visible that the council is doing. I admit to being a mathematician, so when the reports come back at our next council meetings, I would really like to see from each cabinet member, and you can shoot me down later, I would like to see where we are now with some of these proposals and initiatives and actions. And when you report the progress, can we have some data or some RAG rating or something to show us what has been achieved between this committee meeting and the next one? Because I think words don't actually state what has been achieved. Words can be very woolly and very, excuse my words, but I'd like to see data. Sorry, Cabinet members, please bring us back a report, but please bring us some hard facts of what has been achieved.
Thank you, Wendy. Councillor Dunn, did I see your hand in the corner?
It did, and I just wanted to make sure Councillor Griggs' hand had been seen as well. But I'm actually going to repeat a little bit of that, so I'm not going to waffle too long. But yeah, I was just reflecting earlier that a lot of residents will be familiar with SMART objectives at work. So that's objectives that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So I thought, yeah, as Councillor Griggs said, a lot the Cabinet members' goals were good. They were quite broad and quite aspirational. So just wanted to ask when the Cabinet delivery plan will be made available to councillors and residents, whether that will contain enough detail that we can hold you all to specific measurable targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Petty.
Thank you, Mike. I think this is a great report in terms of starting something, and I recognise the work done, but also I like the sections about background and proposed approach to this, so I think that's great. When I was reading through the section with regards to Councillor Malian's points on highways and transport, I just noted that point 1 and point 2 both focus on road surfaces, repairs and potholes, and I just was going to ask whether potentially he might consider point 1 and point 2 being merged together, and the introduction of a point around transport and specifically sustainable transport. The reason I ask this is because last week we as the council hosted a people's emergency briefing in recognition of the need to act with urgency, and that those organisations with responsibilities for transport and for other carbon emission heavy sectors should be taking the climate emergency very seriously and should be looking for ways to help and support residents and our organisations to look to reduce our emissions. Without having a priority listed that references the climate emergency when you are the portfolio lead for transport and highways, I fear we are missing something there and missing something very important. The People's Emergency was really well attended by our officers. It was a packed room. I was away, but I've seen a photo, and I'm sure that there were officers from the highways and transport team who remain committed for sustainable transport. We have amazing officers working on ensuring and encouraging our residents to walk and cycle, and our residents to use the buses. So could I ask whether he might consider that? And I don't need an answer on it today, but it would be amazing if that might be considered, given our priority around climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bird.
On a similar theme, I mean, we are in a climate emergency, and I think this last few weeks has brought the heat home to us, really. I think it was quoted that you might have had a hot summer this year, but it's not your hottest you're ever going to have. My point is the climate emergency seems to have been put in at the end on number 7, and I really think the climate emergency should be underneath one of the initial priority themes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Crew, have you next?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that work I've been doing on behalf of Cabinet members, I know of 3 which are doing a lot more work than it says here. And on behalf of the Cabinet member that's not present at the moment, can I let members know that currently on the app, we now have 51,000 users.
That's great to hear, Councillor Crew. Councillor Brake.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to associate very much with the words from my colleague in Yatton, I think, about having some tangible targets here. I think it's very good having kind of these ambitions, but it would be good as well to actually have that numerical data and that numerical background. You actually managed to steal my point, Mike, and in the report you talk about having quarterly progress updates. I do think this needs to be every council for the much more effective scrutiny. I'm going to ask fairly directly, if it is clear within those reports that you bring to us that a Cabinet member is falling behind on these priority actions, what action will you be taking as leader of the Cabinet?
Councillor Dorr.
Thank you. mine was in relation to James Clayton's 3 priorities, and just I felt that the first and the second one were very, very similar. I was wondering if he might consider merging them and adding a third one that focused a little bit more around his role of the sports and leisure development, as it might be a very good way to use money from SIL that could help mitigate some crime and just kind of offer. I think if we could, I remember a meeting quite a while ago you said about SIL money being spent on arts being not necessarily the best way SIL money could be spent. And I think I'd really like to see, I'm sure you have been doing the work, I'd really like to see what work you've been doing to kind of influence SIL money being spent on things like skate parks, new football courts, those kind of things within new developments, if that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorr. Looks like that's all the hands I have in the room, so I'll come back to Mike.
So yes, I mean, really helpful to have the specific feedback on some of the priorities, which we'll obviously take away and reflect upon. So that's really helpful. Just on the data and smart objectives point, really happy to do what we can on that. I'm smiling slightly because I would just, I'm so sorry, officers. Unfortunately, the process that we have to go through is we come up with ideas and then we say to our officer corps, this is what we want to do, and we want to do it all in a really smart, we want it by Tuesday, we want it in this way, and we don't want it to cost any more than this. And then they come back and tell us why that's not possible, and there are all other different. So it's not always completely straightforward, but we will do our best to try and deliver some smarter objectives and timelines and so on. Councillor Pryke asked what happens if a cabinet member falls behind. Well, I think there are 2 things that should happen. The first is that it's an opportunity to scrutinise those cabinet members. I am really happy and comfortable, the cabinet are, to be scrutinised and challenged. So if you think we're not doing enough or we're not doing it right, absolutely come to council, come to a scrutiny committee and hold people to account. And part of the reason for setting out these clear priorities is to give more opportunities and tools and ammunition, if you like, for you to do that. Secondly, I think maybe some stocks in the town square where we could, anyone who is underperforming and the money raised could perhaps go towards Burnbeck Pier or Portishead Lifeboat or something like that. So we could have a fun way of holding people to account as well as a more serious one. I think all of the cabinet are wildly enthusiastic about that. I can see a number of grumpy faces, so I think that's a winner. But genuinely, this is an attempt to try and be clearer and more focused about priorities. And I just want to add that Councillor Crewe is 100% correct. In no way does this reflect everything that the council is doing, everything that the cabinet is working on, and certainly not everything that our hard-working officers are doing every day to support our communities and deliver services. But what we have tried to do is identify and be clearer about these are the things that we want to try and do in the next 9 months or so, and please do challenge, scrutinise and hold us to account on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Moving on to the votes. All members in favour? That is carried. Thank you very much. Agenda item 9 is the commissioning plan for substance use contracts recommissioning, and that's Councillor O'Maris presenting.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is a recommissioning of the Specialist Adult Substance Use Treatment Service, or in other words, drug and alcohol treatment and rehabilitation. It would be for a proposed duration of 5 years from April 2027 with a 2-year extension if required. So just to be clear, this is not the procurement plan itself. It is a request for approval to do the engagement and consultation to then shape the service that we need to procure. The procurement will be through the provider selection regime, which allows local authorities procuring for NHS-funded services to choose an appropriate way to procure. And this is very similar to the public health nursing contract, which came to full council last time. So, moving on to cost. The service is expected to cost 2.2 million a year for 5 years, with a total contract value of around 11 to 15 million, depending on whether the extension is used. So it is a large sum. But you'll be pleased to know that it is fully funded through the Ring Fence Public Health Grant, which has a further ring fence bit for drug and alcohol services. And just for perspective, the total North Somerset Public Health Grant in 26-27 is 12.7 million. Drug and alcohol services ring fence is 3 million roughly, against our total net budget of 200 odd million. So it's just bear that in mind. And in line with the local government settlement this time round, we have been given a 3-year settlement for the public health grant and drug and alcohol portion. And the drug and alcohol portion is confirmed for 27-28. It is a reasonable expectation that public health grant will cover the cost of providing the service for the entire duration of the contract, however, although we can never account for inflation, and that's always a problem that's highlighted in the risk section. In terms of performance, the detail of the performance is going to be assessed in that procurement process, but I'll just go through some of the figures that we have presented here. The current provider is an organisation called With You, We Are With You, and the performance is strong against national and regional indicators. We treated 1,300 people last year, and so for some of the scores, retention in treatment for more than 12 weeks is 85% compared with regional national, which is lower. And another measure, which is treatment progress, is 55%, is still better than regional and national averages. So I think that is testament to the really hard work that officers do, and also together with other partner organisations and of course with you as well. But we have seen a 17% increase in numbers accessing structured treatment over the last 4 years, with a 44% increase in particular in alcohol numbers. Finally, on this point, the North Somerset Drug and Alcohol Partnership is it's a multi-agency group which is responsible for how the sort of oversight of the strategy for drug and alcohol treatment, and to provide and to really improve treatment and recovery for residents using the services. And it meets around every 6 or 8 weeks. So it's a fairly regular and multi-agency joint approach. So it's not often that health matters come to full council. So if you will indulge me, I've got some statistics. We did talk about the importance of data, so I've got some more stats. They're horrible ones though, I'm afraid. More people die from drug misuse every year than from all knife crime and road traffic accidents combined. In a typical English secondary school, 40 pupils will be living with a parent with a drug or alcohol problem. About 1 in 6 child in need assessments carried out by local authorities last year recorded parental alcohol problems, with a similar proportion for drug use. Problem parental alcohol or drug use was also recorded in more than a third of serious case reviews where a child died or was seriously harmed. Almost half of homicides every year are drug-related, and in almost a fifth, the suspect is under the influence of alcohol, while nearly half of so-called acquisitive crimes, such as shoplifting, theft, burglary, or robbery, is drug-related. 49% of people in prison have an identified substance misuse problem, and 35% of offenders in the community. I'm always coming to the end of the awful statistics, but I've got 2 more. Drug dependence, as we know, can be both a cause and consequences of homelessness and rough sleeping. MHCLG has estimated that almost 2/3 of people who sleep rough have a current drug or alcohol problem. Also in relation to housing, the data shows that 1/5 of adults starting treatment in 2019 to 2020, okay, this is a bit old, reported a housing problem, increasing to 1/3 of people in treatment for opiates. I think I'll just move on one more point about the funding. So we do have 2.2 million per year for this recommissioning contract. But just to put that in perspective, that is actually less in monetary terms than what we had from the government 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, in 2012-2013. So over 10 years ago, we had 2.4 million, and this year we have 2.2 million. So that's less money to treat people who are some of the most vulnerable in our society, and as I've just stated with all the statistics, can cause some of the I won't say problems, but you know, these are the problems that we are trying to grapple with every single year, all the time, in all of our areas of council. And so that's a legacy of austerity, and we are trying really hard to build up from that. I think it's important just to remember that even though this is a commissioning, it's in theory just the commissioning, the recommissioning approval for the drug and alcohol treatment. You know, all the detail is going to be in the procurement, in the engagement, and in the consultation process, which is set out in the paper. But it's important that we bear in mind the wider background of why we're doing this and the importance of it, and also understanding the strategy that is underpinning it. I think I've heard from many of you about your frustrations, about some of the shoplifting, street homelessness, dry houses, failures in supported housing or housing first, and lack of capacity from police and community safety in trying to solve this. It's impossible to solve this, and certainly not with the funding that we have, but it's also not about funding. It's about joining up the departments. It's about joining up the work to make sure we're actually dealing with it in a holistic way. I'm just going to say, so Councillor Clayton, with your work as a street warden, and I know you've been called out all hours of all our meetings, and I've seen myself how somebody having an episode in broad daylight opposite the bus interchange over here would have 4 or 5 or 6 police officers trying to help. And if it's not in broad daylight, we don't have that support because they're doing something else somewhere else. Councillor Caniford, with your work in economy and the high street businesses, we've talked about shoplifting and the frustration that you feel as well. And Councillor Gibbons, of course, with your work supporting children at risk, looked after children and care leaves, and also Councillor Tristram, sorry, with children and young people's scrutiny. And I learned that there are daily multi-agency meetings involving often parental drug and alcohol dependency, as we've heard earlier, that these are issues. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is I would like to see your support for this work and also your interest and feedback to the team so that we have a really effective joined up strategy and refreshed North Somerset drug and alcohol partnership at the helm. And we want to see that work that is open to feedback from residents and from our stakeholders. If you are interested and you want to get involved, there will be a stakeholder engagement in August. And also there's a HOSC briefing, a Health Review Scrutiny briefing session in autumn. But also, I do recognise that some of us have been around for a very long time, and you've seen it all, and I think I would like to invite you to tell the officers, their contacts are listed in the paper, and also tell me, because that's how we can provide the feedback to make things change and make things better. Finally, just thank you to the officers, Sam Hayward and Fiona Dixon, and also HOSC colleagues for all their input at the various sessions that we've had. The recommendations proceed with the recommissioning. I'm happy to move the recommendations, and I will take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Homaris. Councillor Clayton, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Councillor Homaris referenced me in her report, I think it's only right that I look to reply and obviously draw on my experience as working out on the streets. Now, in relation to your report, there's no doubt that this service and the money that is being spent is well spent and does help a lot of people in relation to addiction. I'm not denying that at all. The problem we have got is, you know, what we would class as a minority is slowly growing a lot more into majority now, where people are failing their drug rehabilitation and now taking it out to the streets, especially in the town centre of Weston-super-Mare. Unfortunately, probably going on about 2 years ago now, we had a really good community response officer that worked for us and was absolutely dedicated to the town centre and had some brilliant ideas going forward that was kiboshed by his manager in community safety. And one of those ideas, which ultimately resulted to him leaving North Somerset Council because he felt that he couldn't do any more. But one of those ideas was a multi-agency approach where community safety, i.e. community response, somewhere to go, and we are with you, look to go and do outreach with the individuals that are out on the street that have actually failed in the system. But unfortunately, as a council, we failed to take upon that good approach, which I was really disappointed about. So I think there is more that we can do as multi-agencies, and that being one of the examples.
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. Were you happy to second the proposal as well? Thank you. Councillor Petty.
As one of the newer members of HOSP, I've really found it insightful to have these briefings with more detail about this proposal that was coming. And it was really positive to hear that we had a partner in We Are With You that was providing a good service and that was, you know, really supporting our residents, and that we had a better than average results, you know, in our kind of in comparing to national and regional averages. Nonetheless, the page where we do have the statistics, table 1, about the increase on page 93, about the increasing number of people who need treatment, and specifically looking at, and actually really specifically looking at adults who use alcohol. You know, alcohol is not an illegal substance, but every day there are lives and households being destroyed around our district, and not, like, I do recognise there are significant issues that happen in Weston with drug issues and different issues, but actually even drug issues and alcohol issues are impacting households and families across the district. I think that we as a council put into our strategies and our policies that we want to interact early, and we want to do intervention or prevention before families reach crisis, before children are having these crisis appointments where they might be needing to be taken into care. However, what I understand is that the government money and the public health money comes only at the point that you're receiving crisis treatment. So a bit like James just said, what we want is innovation of working together and working with community on the ground and going to people where they are and working through solutions. But time and again, the money comes in a ring-fenced way, and it's all right if you're going into treatment, but many households are being impacted in a way that they're not able to engage in that system. And I think we have a long way to go. And thank you, Jenna, for highlighting, you know, that a joined-up approach is the only way we're really going to help families, help children, help adults in need, and help our communities to get out of the holes that they're in, and that they don't want to be there, but that there's many different hurdles that will come and face them. And I think that, as she also highlighted, there are so many different impacts on all of our communities, in our schools, in our shops with their shoplifting, and in other different environments. And only when we can continue to work together and collaboratively and really in a preventative way will we start to see a change and really help the individuals in need. But thank you, I do welcome this report and the partners that we're working with and all the hard work that our staff do to this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Councillor Griggs.
Thank you. A really detailed report that I read from beginning to end at the weekend. It reads as if the current provider is the preferred provider. And it reads as if this is the provider that everybody wants to work towards giving the contract to. I've no problem with that, but I think it's really important that there is a proper procurement process, that there is a proper analysis of what else might be out there. We've had just a couple of speakers now talking about what more needs to be done. So yes, the officers are suggesting the current provider is really good, but we need to make sure that there isn't another provider out there that can perhaps add to what already is managing to be delivered with the current budget. So I'm just asking for a really robust procurement process that comes back to councillors or in a briefing to scrutiny panel at some stage in the future. We've had a really good detailed briefing on it already, which was splendid, but I think we also need to be kept up to date with the procurement process to make sure that, yes, the current provider is definitely, at the end of the day, the right one to go with. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Griggs. No further questions in the room? Oh, sorry. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, Jen, if I could, with what James mentioned earlier about this multi-agency approach. Particularly from my experience, as people know, I was a police sergeant in Bristol, in a very deprived area of Bristol in Knoll, where probably 9 out of 10 of the people that came into custody were drug users. So I just wanted to know, I think James referred to it in relation to the multi-agency approach, what we're doing within the town, where we are using a multi-agency approach where we go out, something that the police have done in Bristol many times called operational orders, where they go out and they actually speak to people that are on the street, people that are involved in crime, and get a true reflection of why they're in that position. Because people are missing out, and also as a former magistrate, I was giving people drug rehabilitation orders. So there's things out there that we can really help these people with, and I think the multi-agency approach that James mentioned is something that we should really use, because I think it's a very valuable resource.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Homaris, would you like to come back to sum up at all?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the feedback. So, as to what Councillor Clayton and also what Councillor Davis has mentioned, absolutely, I think this is the time. This is the time to feed that back, to explain, to share with officers and the wider team what other people are doing that you've experienced that's worked, so that we can shape the procurement and, you know, of course, we're not the people doing the procurement. This is a very detailed process with lots of rules that we have to follow, and we don't know about that. And I think we have to respect that process, which is not an easy process. However, it is our job to feed back our experiences to try and shape some of the change in the approach that we take. So I fully take on board what you both said, and I would like to see that being explored in the papers and in the process in following months. Councillor Petty, you spoke about, so alcohol. There is actually no national treatment plan for alcohol in this country. I don't think there ever has been. And that is a problem. I've heard from the Director of Public Health, I've heard from our health colleagues that it's really difficult trying to roll out a programme when you don't have best practice guidelines that somebody has established over a period of time. Sometimes it's good not having central government tell you what to do, but actually in this case, I think this is a problem. But the teams recognise that it's a growing area and they need to do, there's more work to be done. You also spoke about prevention and the limitations of the rehabilitation orders coming too late, or the treatment coming too late when people already have a pronounced problem, or perhaps they've already left prison and they come out. I think that is a problem, isn't it? And I think part of it is about recognising that the government grant for the drug and alcohol funding has very specific there's commissioning guidelines, and there's all kinds of tick boxes that you have to follow. What does constitute under drug and alcohol support work that you can use your money for? And they're very strict. I mean, we've heard for BSIP, we've heard for all kinds of projects that it is really difficult. However, I think the key bit is about, again, it's about that joined up working. It's about us recognizing, well, this is what we can do. Maybe we push the envelope a little bit. I know officers do that sometimes, not often, but when you need to, and it's about then saying, well, this is the bit that we can't do, but actually you guys, as the police, you can do this bit, or probation, you can do this bit, or ICB, healthcare, GPs, you can do this bit, but you've got to communicate that, and I think that's what's really important. We can't all do everything, and we can't all just do our own little bit. We've got to actually ask other agencies, I need you to do this, I'll do this bit, and that's what joined up working is. Not just all sitting in a room together, not talking, not sharing what we need from each other. I think that's probably all I had to say. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Homaris.
Sorry, it's not all I had to say. I want to feedback on what Wendy, Councillor Griggs said as well about the feedback and scrutiny, and I agree. And I wonder if I've written down field trip. I suppose if there's a way that in the process it could be part of a HOSC, and Helen's not here, so I wouldn't dare suggest. But perhaps there's a way to gather more background or evidence to see what others are doing, to make sure that what we're doing is. Because you talked about scrutiny, you're looking at me puzzled. You talked about proper scrutiny. Sorry.
Of all the different options.
of all the different
Yeah,
options in the procurement process.
Proper scrutiny, but also making sure that the procurement process was robust if we ended up choosing our current supplier, our current provider.
Yeah, and I think part of that process, which I completely agree with, and I haven't read the PSR in full detail, but I can see that there is a procedure for doing that. But there's something about then maybe offering an opportunity to explore what other providers do in our area. So I'd be very happy perhaps working with Helen to set something up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. To the vote, members, all in favour? Thank you, that's clearly passed. But any votes against? No. Any abstentions? No. Carried. Thank you very much. Oh. Sorry, Councillor Crockford-Hawley. Moving on. Council Constitution 2026, and that is my capable person to the left here, our Assistant Director of Legal Governance and Monitoring Officer, Nicholas Brain.
Members, hopefully the report stands for itself, recommending two what I would term as internal changes. One, to tidy up contract standing orders and fin regs, to pull them back in because the figures have fallen out of kilter. One, to just put in some extra bits around variations to contracts. Possibly the most significant change is the one being dictated to you by government, which will be around calling to planning committees and the decisions that can go to planning committees. You'll have seen in the report that they're being more restrictive on what you can put to planning committees and the method in which you are doing so. Little choice. I'm suggesting that the first two, the internal ones, you would do with immediate effect. The other one you would hold off and wait for the legislation to go through before you implement.
Thank you, Nick. Leader, I believe you're proposing.
Well, I will then.
Would you like to speak to it at all? Seconder? Councillor Malin, thank you very much. Councillor Payne, you were the first hand.
Yeah, thank you. We have to vote for this so that the council continues to comply with the law. But honestly, I can't see any other reason to support the changes to the planning procedures, which are specifically designed to reduce the democratic accountability of the decisions taken. It's yet another example of the government telling councils what to do, how to do it, and completely ignoring local arrangements, taking away yet more of the discretion remaining with councillors as community representatives. But I just want to make the point that this council already meets the objections that the government is trying to achieve with these reforms and has done for quite some time. P&R already has the recommended number of members for planning committees. We already have a great working relationship between members and planning officers, and we don't have an excessive number of planning applications coming to committees. So, you know, if anything, I feel that these changes risk harming relationships as residents and neighbours are sidelined in decision making. So there it is. We have to vote for this, despite the fact that there are no benefits to North Somerset.
Thanks, Councillor Payne. Councillor Whitfield, did I see your hand? I thought I saw a hand in that corner. Perhaps not.
Sorry, I just put my hand up to second it.
Oh,
that was all.
Thank you. In that case, Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
This is a completely pointless exercise, but we can do nothing other than play along with Westminster's silly game. They have invented something which is probably relevant to a number of councils in the country, though I've done no homework on this, and I presume nobody in this chamber has. Those councils where the members call in planning applications left, right and centre and waste everybody's time. In this council, and most people out there probably don't realise it, but we invariably end up with no more than 1 or 2 planning applications to deal with at a meeting, and it's not unknown for meetings to be cancelled because there's nothing on the agenda. So we are not holding up the process. What we're not doing here is pointing the finger at some of those people who are holding it up. And the finger of blame should be pointed at some of the developers not at the officers, not at the councillors, but some of those development companies which keep the system ticking over forever and ever in order to seek advantage. They are the people who are holding it up, and they are the people that we need to be having a go at, not those councillors, certainly in this council, whether I agree with colleagues or not. The efficiency with which we deal with planning applications here is actually pretty good. And we need to let the public know that. This is a Westminster trick by people who live in a bubble in Westminster, haven't a clue what's going on in the real world. And it doesn't matter which party's in power, it's exactly the same whichever lot are up there. We yokels know how to look after our sites. That's my point.
Thank you, John. Councillor Davies.
As somebody that's sat on the Planning and Regulatory Committee, I think this is a real overreach by this current government. I think it's very disappointing that people locally are not going to have a chance to put their point across by, speaking to their local councillor, so their local councillor can bring it into committee. And I'd like to say that there have been fundamental decisions that have been very beneficial to North Somerset Council from the decisions made by the committee over those couple of years that I was involved. And I just want to point out, I think it's very, like I said, a governmental overreach. And when you talk about devolution and letting us have more control, it just seems like they're taking more control away from us. And I think it's actually, I think members of the public are going to be really aggrieved about that process.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Petty, I have you next.
Just to jump on the bandwagon, as per each other party and individual that has spoken, this is a farce, and this is significant overreach. And as much as we have no control over it, I would still suggest that actually writing a letter to all of the MPs and to the new Prime Minister is worth doing, because we've already done, as Robert said, we've already done our hard work. A few years, since I was elected in 2019, we did significant reform of how we did our planning committee. We all worked hard. We worked collectively. We recognised when things were not being efficient and not good use of our roles and our responsibilities. And then we changed the size of the planning committee, and then we recognised what was appropriate to bring to planning committee. So as others have said, but actually I do think, given the number of us who feel strongly that this is not the right direction, and given how little this has to do with devolution, or just the opposite of devolution, I would ask whether the leader considers adding a recommendation. And I know I'll be proposing a change, but can I propose to add recommendation number 5, that this council, while voting in support, has serious concerns about this change of legislation, given we were already a well-functioning planning committee.
Would the Chamber wish to accept that recommendation, or should we move it as an amendment? Fine? Happy? Happy. Annemieke, I'm going to come to you last, if that's okay. So, Councillor Burden, have you next?
Thank you, Chairman. I totally agree with what's just been said. We've got a situation now, which is basically why I'm so anti-government's proposals for alleged devolution. Because what's actually happening with those people in Westminster, they are giving us all the powers to make all the decisions we like, as long as we do exactly as we're told. And I'm sorry, my electorate don't like that. My electorate expect me to turn up at this chamber and tell officers that I think they made the wrong decision on a planning application and on a lot of other matters. And I think it's appalling that we have a government talking about devolution, talking about giving power to local people, and then taking it away.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Crew.
Thanks, Chairman. I just want to pick up what Councillor Crockford-Hawley said. No matter what government is in power, nobody ever takes action against developers. And John is completely right. Hugh and I have a situation at the moment in our ward where there are 2 developments which have been completed for 14 years, still not adopted because the developers haven't finished doing the work they're responsible for. Now, that is criminal. And we have a situation where we give planning permission for X number of houses and they're built at a very slow rate. There should be something to say, if you start a development, it must be finished by this date. But no government, whatever they are, we can go back, certainly Councillor Crockford Hall and I can go back years and years. No government has ever done anything to developers. It's always not the councils, but not the developers.
Thank you, Councillor Crew. Councillor Parake.
Thank you. I appreciate that the leader is moving this, but this is probably more a question for Nick. Hearing everything that we've just said, and I'm very encouraged by what Councillor Petty has done, if we vote no on these two recommendations, what actually happens?
So they wouldn't go into your standing orders. Government has already said that in its view, if you put then a matter to committee, either through member call-in or it wasn't in the list for committee, it would be almost certainly found against you on the judicial review.
Thank you, members. Councillor Wade.
It didn't work. Thank you. It works now. Thank you very much. And like everyone who has already spoken, I completely agree that this seems the wrong way around. For a council that's functioning really, really well, with the planning committee that's functioning really well, with the number of councillors on that committee that already is within the guidelines that are now being set by the government, I find it extraordinary. But as Nick pointed out, this is what the government is insisting we do. So I don't think that we have any choice but to accept it at this point. But I absolutely feel that it is worth writing a letter, even if the letter never gets replied to, or even if it gets ignored, or they come back to us and say, yeah, we hear you, but never mind. I think it's worth making the point because it is a really good point. So that's something that if all councillors think that that's a good idea, I'd be more than happy to do that. I also think it's worth pointing out at this stage that I have spoken to a head of planning about this, and we are putting in place a process whereby councillors will be able to request a conversation with the planning team. So we're going to try and work around the system as much as we can so that there will be some discussion possible. It won't be an official meeting, it won't be like a planning committee meeting, but we are seriously willing to see how we can make this work. I know that that's very small compared to what we all want it to be and the importance that we all put on the planning committee decisions and discussions that we have. But I'm certainly taking all of that on board, and I'm more than happy to come back to you at a later stage to let you know what the procedure is that we're able to put in place. I hope that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Annemieke. Councillor Malin.
Thank you, Chair. I won't waffle on because good members have made all the points that I would have wanted to make, other than, hey, you know, this is the Whitehall blob, isn't it? It's with their Stalinist centralising tendencies. It happened under the last government, and it's happening under this government. Whether you allot blame to the politicians and the parties, or whether you accept that there is such a thing as a Whitehall blob that, frankly, most ministers never actually get round to seeing, I'm not sure. What happens, though, is it keeps happening, is the point, and we get stripped of more and more powers. Councillor Crockford Hawley talked about the developers, quite rightly. You could develop that further. The government have been told, under no uncertain terms, that the problem isn't really with councils and their ability to see through the process, even though we accept that there are some bad ones around the country. This one most certainly isn't a bad one at doing that. The real problem they've got is with land banking by the developers and the fact that they don't have the resources, the builders, the brickies, the whatever, to deliver the number of houses they want in the time that they want them delivered. We can make all the decisions, or we can have those decisions taken away from us and put through as standard. and they'll get their permissions and they still won't be built in 3, 5, 10 years' time because of that particular problem. So if the government doesn't aim itself, if the government wants the houses built, if it can't aim at the real problem of why the houses aren't being built, it shouldn't be surprised when it gets a bad outcome.
Thank you very much, Councillor Malin.
Sorry, Chair. I do beg your pardon. If you could indulge me, I meant to say that Councillor Petty, Bridget proposed at one stage writing to the MPs and maybe the Secretary of State, Minister, whatever. I don't know if that was part of the formal proposal, but I would hope it would be.
Yes. Are you confirming, Councillor Petty, that's part of the recommendation?
I think I understood that had been accepted as a recommendation into this paper.
Good.
Is that correct?
Just so it's clear, we will be voting on the 4 plus Councillor Petty's recommendation. This bill has certainly done something promote unity across this council, so that's something I certainly like to see. But we'll go to the vote. Sorry, just before we go to the vote.
So Chair, the addition, as I understood it, was to write to government. I think Hugh makes a good point of including your MPs. My understanding at the moment is these draft of the regulations are sitting in Parliament. I don't know whether it's the negative affirmation process or the positive one. The one is MPs can vote to say we don't approve. The positive one is more onerous. They actually have to take a vote on it and approve it. I think this is the negative one. I would therefore recommend that you do write to your MPs as well and suggest that they might wish to exercise their power.
Thank you, Nick.
And the reason I've written the recommendation 2, as I did, you'll note it is subject to those actually going through. I did sense that this might be the way the debate went here tonight.
Mike, did you want to say anything else?
Only that I endorse all the remarks, really, that colleagues have made, and I'm very happy with the amended proposals.
Thank you, Leader. To the vote, members. All in favour? Any against? Carried. Thank you, members. To the corporate parenting report and Councillor Gibbons.
Thank you. I can't promise that this will be as exciting as the previous debate, but it's equally important. I'm just pleased to introduce the report, which I always bring to council meetings. And this is an update on our fostering service and the progress being made to support both our children in care and the incredible people who open their homes to them. I'm particularly pleased to note that for the first time in 10 years, we've achieved a net increase in the number of foster carers in North Somerset. We've remained stable for a long time, but to have achieved an increase really says a lot about the commitment for the teams who work on recruitment. I think it's incredibly important milestone because it means more children can stay close to their schools, their friends and their community, including brothers and sisters, and hopefully being able to remain together more easily. I'm also excited about the Weekenders scheme that you'll have read about in the report. I actually went to Western Pride a few weeks ago and met the team there and the organisers, and they'd had a wonderful response with a number of, I think at that point, 8 or 9 families signing up to be assessed for it. And the purpose behind that is that we know not everybody can become a full-time foster carer, but many people can offer a weekend a month, and that regular break can make a huge difference to the children and their full-time foster carers. So it helps placements remain stable and gives children another trusted adult or family that becomes a positive lifelong presence for them. It's a fantastic way for more people to play a part in supporting our children in care. I also think, in a sense, it's almost like a call to action in that it might inspire some councillors and members of the public watching to consider getting involved, because the level of commitment, while important, isn't as huge as it is to become a full-time foster carer. The report also highlights our continued investment that we make locally through initiatives like our Mockingbird hubs, peer support groups, and the ongoing recruitment. It's all about building a strong fostering community where carers feel valued, supported, and continue to change children's lives. I will not talk too long, but I will say a little bit more, because since this report was written, we have received the welcome news from the Department for Education that the regional Southwest Fostering Hub has secured approval for its fully costed regional delivery plan. I did hear about this while I was at the LGA conference at a meeting with Josh McAllister, but we've had the announcement today. And this forms part of the government's ambition to create 10,000 additional foster care places by 2029. The programme will strengthen regional recruitment, assessment and support foster carers, and it's backed by nearly £700,000 of funding for the hub development and further investment to expand the Mockingbird programme, although we are an early adopter of Mockingbird and are looking to open our 5th constellation here in North Somerset. There will be a programme called Room Makers, where fostering hubs will be eligible to get small capital grants to foster carers to make adaptations to their homes to offer an additional fostering place where appropriate. And we'll have to bid for that, obviously. There's a pot of money that bids have to go in for. And there'll be an innovation programme. A Southwest bid has been put in, but we are yet to hear the outcome of how this is rolled out. As North Somerset, we plan to join the regional model next year, learning from the early adopters to ensure a smooth transition for our staff, our carers, and most importantly, our children. So this is just an update for information for you all, but I hope colleagues will join me in recognising the dedication of our fostering team and above all of our foster carers. Their compassion and commitment to give children the stability, love and opportunities they deserve is something that we cannot put a value on, and I'm incredibly grateful to all of them. And that's all I have to say. I've endeavoured to keep it brief, and I hope positive.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. That was certainly positive. Any questions, members? Thank you very much. That report is for noting, and we've duly noted it. Moving on to the forward plan. Which is the leader?
Yes, move for noting. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions, members? Fantastic. Moving on to question time. Can I, for the sake of everyone here, please keep questions brief, but keep your hands up for 30 seconds or so. We can capture everyone. Cronley and Harriet on the first side. Thank you, members. I think we've got everyone. Can I just remind everyone, please supply a copy of your question to the clerk, either in this meeting or after this meeting for the minutes. So moving on to the first question, I have Councillor. I'm going to work from this end, so I'm going to go for Councillor Pryke, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Canniford. Why did the Council proceed with the implementation of parking charges in Clevedon whilst an ongoing court case related to said charges was only 4 weeks away?
So it was, in our opinion and the advice that we were given, that we were well within our position. We do not feel we'll lose the case. The equipment that has been bought will be reused if the case was lost, and therefore no cost to this council. The discussion has been had to make sure we are in a solid position, and I feel we are.
On a follow-up question then, if the council was to lose the case, would you be stopping charging immediately? And as such, any fines incurred during that period, would they not be paid?
If we actually lost a case, we would then take legal advice on those questions you've asked. But of course, if the case was lost, we would therefore have to look at our TROs and re-establish the position we're standing.
Thank you, Councillor Pryke. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. It's another question to Councillor Canniford. It's common knowledge now that at least one business has shut in Nailsea due to parking charges, with many others struggling. Great Western Road East and West, two of Clevedon's central car parks, are now largely empty. since charges have been introduced. The 6 monthly reviews have proven these charges are largely failing without major changes. So why should local businesses pay for this administration's failure to make a coherent and rounded policy?
So, good question, and I like it because back at the scrutiny panel, we, of course, and I think you were sitting next to me, challenged the businesses to provide the data that they have had a fall off in business rather than just word of mouth. We've not yet had any of that data, and I still request it. So if you can have a chat with those businesses which may not want to bring it forward. But the reality is, not all businesses are finding the same thing. And quite often, even though I understand charges have been a concern to those in Nailsea, the charges are extremely low. The residents I've spoken to using Nailsea think it is absolutely fantastic value for money. And I asked Nailsea and the Town Council to support the fact that they should be promoting how cheap their parking is, not how bad their town is because there's charges.
And as a follow-up, Chair, the administration and whole cabinet has refused to detail how revenue is reinvested in our local economies. They've refused to commit that any portion of the revenue is a net gain for highways, and they've refused to use revenue to support bus travel within our towns and community transport. So how does the public benefit from?
I would simply say it benefits exactly the same way as it does with revenue from any part of North Somerset, and it goes into the revenue budget, but therefore helps provide the services that the public actually use.
Thank you, Luke. Councillor Burden. Sorry, Councillor, your mic.
Sorry. My question is to Councillor Amanika Waite, Member responsible for planning policy. I appreciate the efforts made previously to formulate a truly sustainable local plan in line with members' wishes. However, since the misguided intervention of the Labour government, increasing the housing numbers to totally unrealistic figures, ordinary member involvement has been very restricted. In the light of the recently published WECA Nature Recovery Strategy and the High Court ruling regarding the acceptability of building in the floodplain, bringing the officer's initial screening criteria into question, will she please urgently find a way to, in discussion with the chairman of the PSEC Scrutiny Committee, to involve members in the reappraisal of officers' selected sites now before the inspector? I don't call for this lightly, but if the council sticks rigidly to the full list of sites as presently proposed, great harm will be done to sites of long-term significance when development could be directed in the light of the latest court ruling to far more appropriate locations.
Thank you for that question. I absolutely understand the frustration felt by many residents across North Somerset in a lot of different places about the locations that have been included in the local plan. I know that Councillor Burden knows as well as I do that we have a very high number of homes to build, and that this is legislated by government. We also have exceptional difficulties in this area in terms of where we can build, because it's mostly greenbelt, or it's floodplain, or it is an area of outstanding beauty, the Mendips. So we have a very small area where we can build homes, and homes do need to be built because that is what government has instructed us to do, and the numbers are theirs, and we are there to actually meet those numbers. Now, as you know, the local plan has been submitted to the inspectorate with the full list of sites that we have allocated for that local plan. Because the local plan has been submitted to the inspectorate, we are not able to reinvestigate, if you like, any of the allocated sites, and all the sites are going forward as part of that local plan, and it will be for the inspection to determine whether those sites should be allocated or not. And I'm afraid that that is all that we can do at the moment. And whilst I appreciate the frustration, I'm afraid the sites have been submitted, the local plan has been submitted, and all of this is going to have to be determined by the inspection process when it starts later in this year, which we expect to be November, December.
Chairman, can I say I've considered that answer totally unsatisfactory? We have a very clear change of policy brought about by a High Court judge, instructing this council that it was wrong in one of its major criteria for checking the suitability of sites. I accept totally we have submitted papers to the inspectorate. In the past, Chairman, we've been at this stage before. A change has happened and we've had to relook. All I'm asking for is for members to have a view on these sites, because as it stands at the moment, we have various sites in the north of the district that are in the Greenbelt, put forward for development purely on officers' recommendation. No member involvement at all. And I think that is wrong. And when Councillor Crockford-Hawley was the executive member, when Councillor Caniford was the executive member, he assured people there would be consultation on all rounds. And there hasn't even been member involvement through the scrutiny panel on the final list that went to the inspector. So I think that is totally wrong, Chairman, and I think as members we should at least have a right to comment. And I'm only asking to comment, I'm not asking to change. I think we should have the right to comment on the list.
Thank you. It's my understanding that all the sites have been through scrutiny, and I will be more than happy to let you have a list of all the meetings where the list of allocations was discussed. I don't have any problem with that. And as far as the decision on the High Courts is concerned, the decision of the High Court is something that we all fundamentally disagree with. It's a huge decision that they have taken, and it is something that doesn't just affect North Somerset Council, it affects every single council in this country. And I cannot think for a moment that every single council in the country is now going to withdraw their local plan and have another look at their allocated sites because of a decision by the High Court. As much as I regret that decision, I find it fundamentally unacceptable that the courts have made that decision because, you know, let's face it, people who live in an area of flood risk or whose new house is going to be built in an area of flood risk, as a person, I look at that and I think to myself, you won't be able to insure that house. And when you do live there, if your house gets flooded, there are going to be issues over, you know, all the cost of your furnishings that you need to do. So I completely understand all that frustration. We are as angry about that as anybody else. But when it comes to the list of allocated sites, my understanding is that they have been through the scrutiny committee meetings. And after this meeting, I will get the list up for you and I will share it with you in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Dorr, you have the next question.
Yeah, mine was just to Mike Bell, and it was around, a bit of a strange one, around the postage of notifications to residents about council services, whether that's parking charges or things like court dates. I've just had quite a few residents say to me that they've received post that was quite significantly late, that meant that they then incurred further charges, or one that I received, which was that a resident had been asked to go to court regarding their council tax payment, and they received it the day after the court was meant to happen. So I'm just wondering that, with the fact that Royal Mail is saying that they're going to be changing the dates on their postage, I couldn't find any policies online about what as a council, what we deal with that. Where's the best place to look? What can I advise my residents on late postage from the council?
So, I mean, it's a good question, Tom. You're right to highlight the challenges that Royal Mail have experienced. I mean, I know in the BS postcode district, they are missing close to a third of their delivery targets. So we know it's very erratic, and I think in some parts of North Somerset, it's even worse. The council's obligation is to notify people. That's to post items or via email in some cases, depending on how the resident has specified their preference. Obviously, we have limited control over what then happens when you issue an item to Royal Mail. But what I am happy to do is look at what our policy and guidance is in those situations where things do arrive late, and what opportunities people have got to appeal or challenge that. And secondly, I will contact Royal Mail and see what they're doing and what their action plan is to sort out the delivery chaos, frankly, in North Somerset.
Thank you both. Councillor Tristram.
Thank you. This is a question for Councillor Whitfield. At a Health and Wellbeing Board meeting earlier on this year, we heard from the Bath and North East Somerset Carers Hub. That Carers Hub has been established for many years and is widely known and well used in the area. The result is that in Baines, people recognise themselves as carers earlier and are able to get the help they need, not just to support their caring function, but also to continue to be full members of society, earning and contributing when that's possible. Can you tell us what North Somerset is doing to follow this excellent example?
Thank you very much, Councillor Tristram, for your question. And thank you for sending it across earlier, giving me an opportunity to give you a fuller answer tonight. In adult social care, we recognise the essential contribution that our carers, both paid and unpaid, make in our society. In particular, unpaid carers are essential to the health and well-being of North Somerset residents and provide care valued at approximately 600 million per year. Support that formal health and care system could not replace. There are an estimated 19,000 unpaid adult carers and more than 2,000 young carers in North Somerset, with caring responsibilities becoming increasingly complex as the population ages. The Health and Wellbeing Board has received evidence that earlier identification, better coordination, improved information and navigation, stronger community support and a dedicated carer's voice could improve outcomes for carers whilst reducing pressure on health and social care services. The Council and its partners have duties under the Care Act, Health and Social Care Act and Public Sector Equality Duty to support carers, reduce inequalities, prevent delay needs and promote well-being. You will note that carers are singled out in the Cabinet priorities that have been set earlier on tonight as well. It's important that this Council should recognise carers as a strategic priority, support early identification of carers, promote a preventative approach, strengthen the voice of carers, and explore investment and sustainable delivery methods. The Bath and North East Somerset model that you have referred to stands out as a good example of how this Council could work with other organisations to better support our carers, to deliver better outcomes for carers, better outcomes for residents receiving care, reduced pressure on public services, and stronger system leadership and coordination. North Somerset's unpaid carers quietly provide hundreds of millions of pounds worth of care every year. They're the backbone of our health and care system, yet too many tell us they feel unseen, unsupported, and only noticed when they reach crisis point. I believe we should be recognising their contribution, preventing avoidable harm, and building a system that works with carers rather than expecting them to carry the burden alone. By investing in prevention, partnership, and stronger carers' voices, we can improve lives whilst creating a more sustainable future for our health and care system. I would therefore propose that we bring further information, so I'll ask the officers to bring a report on the Bath and North East Somerset model to scrutiny, to collect the feedback from councillors on that panel and anybody else who wishes to attend that panel. And the hope is that this would be a starting point for the creation of a policy to allow us to create a similar model in North Somerset to the one in Bath and North East Somerset, if that has the support of councillors at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitfield. Councillor Keating.
Thank you very much. Another question for Councillor Caniford. The mobile library has been
conspicuous by its absence from Blagdon over the last several weeks, leading to residents missing out on accessing library services and having reservations expire. A range of excuses have been given from faulty vehicles, lack of drivers, and so on. But it's getting to the point now where residents are getting quite upset, and we'd be keen to understand what actions you will take to help improve the reliability of the library service for rural residents. The offer of officers to bring the books themselves in their private cars was welcome and kind, but not a long-term and sustainable solution.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I was aware of some of the issues, but not the ongoing problems that you obviously are indicating, and I'm happy to pick that up and apply some pressure and maybe drive the lorry out there myself if need be.
Not sure anyone wants to see that, Mark, in all fairness. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Patrick. Councillor Harriott.
Yeah, another question for Mark Hannaford. Sorry, Mark. This revolves around the town of culture. You'll be aware that Weston-super-Mare, Clevedon, Nailsea and Wraxall applied for the town of culture competition, and unfortunately none of them were successful. But could we harness the enthusiasm and expertise of those 4 towns to contribute to and update our cultural and arts strategy?
Yes, and in fairness, quite apt, I had a briefing today about exactly that and how we can look at other funds to help do that, and how we can tap into some of the new funding that WECA will be getting around cultural benefits to communities. So yes is the short answer. Lack of detail currently, but when we have that, we will get it out to councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Harriott and Councillor Cannaford. Councillor Cronley.
It's me. So Wendy Charlton went, who? So my questions to Councillor Waite. So I've raised concerns in the past about a lack of frequent and effective vegetation management around Western Village, particularly with weeds not being tackled through block paving, bollards, hedges not being cut back till residents complain, and kind of growth through trees not being left untouched. So I know and acknowledge extra work has been done around 2 weed sprays, but it's just not working. So my challenge to you, my question to you is, I think we really need to look at another way to deal with the challenges of Western Village, particularly the block paving, which I know is a real challenge. So my question is, are you able to commit for the council re-looking at how it tackles all this vegetation management issue in Western Village? And can you give me an update in the future about how that's going to be tackled?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for giving me advance sight of it as well. I really appreciate that. So yes, I remember we walked around your area last year together to go and actually see the issue, and I completely understand it is very difficult with the block paving. That does make things very difficult in terms of the weeding process. So just so that all other councillors are aware of this as well, we held, you may remember, a huge inquiry day a couple of years back to look at weed management in North Somerset. And following that, it was decided that we should reduce the amount of glyphosate that we're using, which is a good thing because nobody wants to use glyphosate. We all like to stay alive a little bit longer. So it's been reduced from what used to be 3 some years ago. It used to be 3 times a year. It's now been reduced to once a year. We have made an exception, of course, in Western Village because of the specific issues that you have, and I believe that there's been a second spraying just a couple of days ago, at least in the last week. There's been a second attempt. I know that having spoken to the waste team about this, that they will consider monitoring it and seeing whether a third one is needed. Obviously, that from an environmental perspective isn't something we particularly want to do, but you do have a particular issue with the block paving. So I will come back to you about that and let you know what actions we can take. We're clearly very restricted in terms of budgets and what we can and can't do. The waste weed team actually has, because of funding, has been reduced in the last year, so that really hasn't helped the situation. But I will get back to you with some further details. Thanks.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Payne, I think you're the last question, unless I've missed anyone. Please make me aware if I have. Councillor Payne.
Okay, I've got a question for Councillor Waite. At the council meeting on the 18th of February 2025, I asked you a question about the storage of business waste bins in Western Town Centre, which regularly cause problems such as obstructing pavements and that. and you told me that you were actively pursuing the issue with local businesses. Since then, however, commercial waste management in the town seems only to have got worse. We regularly see overflowing commercial bins, insecure bins attracting fly tipping and rubbish scattered around by gulls and foxes. Our residents are making efforts to manage their waste correctly, but many businesses appear not to be following suit. Could you provide me at some point, not necessarily now, as I would like a full answer, with some more detail of what your plan has been to address these issues and what has been achieved so far? Thank you.
Thank you. I will obviously provide you with a full answer, but just to let you know that from memory, after that particular discussion that we had a walkabout the town in which a number of other councillors were involved, including Councillor Caniford. We had a really good look at the situation. We then had a big meeting with the enforcement team and with people from the waste team, and Councillor Caniford and I were both in that meeting. I think you were there, Mark. And we did a long letter drop to all the different businesses in that particular area to make sure that they all knew what the situation was. I understand that that hasn't worked as well as we would like it to. And so I think you're quite right in raising that issue again, and I will take it back to the waste team and to the enforcement team. And Mark, I see you want to come in on that too, but because I absolutely agree that this is something that does need to be improved.
And I think, Chairman, it's not normal for someone to help the answer, but if you look in the priorities paper, which we've just had in front of Council, one of those priorities is to create a good and proper commercial pickup opportunity between the Council and small and medium-sized businesses, which would actually help in that situation. So we understand the problem, we're on it. Finding the solutions is a little more difficult, but we've got to get it sorted, undoubtedly.
Thank you, members. Can I remind you all just to supply a copy of a question to Nick, please? Moving on, petitions to be presented by members. We have none. I believe we have no leaders announcement either. We have no chief executive with us today, but we do have an able stand-in in Matt Lenny here, so thank you very much, Matt, for standing in. Chair's announcements, I have a few, but I will be brief because I'm very eager to finish before half eight. Council will be aware that our current Assistant Director for Governance and Monitoring, Nick Brain, will be retiring in September. Over the last 2 months, we've been running a recruitment process to find our next Assistant Director. We are very pleased to share that we've appointed Nick's replacement after a rigorous process that came to a conclusion at an employment committee on June 23rd, where the panel came to unanimous agreement. We expect the successful applicant to start on August 24th, which will ensure a comprehensive handover process. Boo. How do we replace the irreplaceable? You certainly cannot go yet. Thank you to emergency service workers and North Somerset Council workers for their continued hard work despite the difficult conditions during this current heat wave. Particular mentions to the household waste and recycling teams and also Avon Fire and Rescue Services, but amongst many other teams that do fantastic work despite this. As Councillor Gibbons mentioned, it was fantastic to see Western Pride return to the town last month after a hiatus. Many thanks to all the organisers, traders, sponsors, and everyone else who contributed to make it such a success. I believe Clevedon Pride is 25th of July, but correct me if I'm wrong, any Clevedon members. Lastly, best of luck to the England's men's football team tomorrow evening. Personally, it's been great to see North Somerset's pubs, bars, community hubs so busy during this tournament. I very much hope for more of the same when England reach the final on Sunday. Any urgent business? None. I declare this meeting closed, 8:29. Thank you very much.